Hey everyone, the Mentalist here. Today's topic is the Hekatjt Subjective Intuition, a modernized interpretation of Van der Hoop perspective. The subjective intuition is oriented towards the inner world of meanings, archetypes, and latent patterns, perceiving reality through deeply personal impressions that arise spontaneously and with great conviction. Unlike the objective intuitor, whose orientation is external and emergent, the subjective intuitor is attuned to the invisible architecture of existence, the inner essence of people, objects, and events. These perceptions are not merely self-referential, but often aim to reveal universal truths. What is sensed within is experienced as more real and meaningful than concrete facts or external circumstances. There is an inner compulsion to interpret life through symbolic and metaphysical lenses. A deeper meaning seems to underlie everything, and life's visible form are treated as mere approximations of an unseen ideal. These inner images, often rich, archaic, and layered, form a private mythos that can serve as a guiding force. Jung's notion of the archetype, or Spinoza's scienza intuitiva, captures this quality, a certainty rooted not in reason or experience, but in an almost sacred recognition. Even in early development, the subjective intuitor appears enigmatic. Unmoved by typical influences from the environment, the subjective intuitor might display bursts of visionary enthusiasm followed by prolonged periods of aloofness. Moments of deep connection can alternate sharply with withdrawal or obstinacy. Behavior is often driven by invisible inner movements, making the type appear moody, unpredictable, or difficult to interpret. Where others adapt to outer expectations, the subjective intuitor builds a private framework and resists intrusion. There is an innate fear of being derailed from the inner path by mundane obligations or social pressure. Over time, this orientation fosters a distinct lifestyle. Relationships, choices, and values are all filtered through an internal standard that resists compromise. External opinions all little sway unless they mirror something already sensed internally. Those who do not align with the subjective intuitor private vision are often excluded from emotional proximity. Yet, when a person, cause of work of art, resonates with that inner standard, the response can be intensely loyal and even reverent. The contrast between cold indifference and profound devotion defines the subjective intuitor relational dynamic. Due to intuitive leaning, the subjective intuitor tends to have a more theoretical approach in lifestyle, favoring abstraction. There is a natural disconnection from the world of facts, rules, and bodily concerns. Daily routines might be neglected and basic needs ignored unless they forcefully assert themselves. The material world is not rejected outright, but must be adapted to fit the inner narrative. External chaos often feels invasive, while inner clarity, no matter how paradoxical, is protected at all costs. Expression remains a notable challenge. The subjective nature of the insights makes them difficult to verbalize. Ideas arise in flashes, often fully formed but resistant to step-by-step explanation. As a result, communication tends to be fragmentary, symbolic, or paradoxical. Thought is often delivered in aphorism, saturated with layered meaning but lacking linear progression. Insight is prized over articulation, and the individual might become impatient with formal reasoning or external critique. When sustained expression is possible, the result is often deeply original. Many artists, visionaries, and mystics emerge from this orientation. However, in less developed forms, this type can become dogmatic, treating symbols or formulations as if they held final truth. Once an image is invested with personal conviction, it might be upheld with absolute rigidity. This can result in uncompromising belief systems or prophetic tones that steer either devoted followers or sharp opposition. Emotion, under the influence of subjective intuition, becomes unpredictable and dualistic. Deep connections alternate with detachment. There is often intense ambivalence in relationships, marked by contradictory feelings that might shift without warning. The emotional life reflects the same symbolic tension found in psychic processing, a constant interplay between exalted ideals and hidden chaos. At times, the subjective intuitor might oscillate between grandiosity and despair, spiritual assurance and moral collapse. When this tension overwhelms the psyche, there might emerge a struggle between inner divinity and perceived inner darkness. The least developed domain is the world of concrete engagement. The standard world feels alien, particularly physical needs and drives might be neglected or misunderstood. Daily routines, social norms, or practical expectations are experienced as burdens. The subjective intuitor attempts to minimize contact with what cannot be spiritually regulated or given inner coherence. Yet this detachment from the sensory and pragmatic can lead to confusion, vulnerability, or misjudgment in everyday life. Ultimately, the subjective intuitor seeks not to escape reality, but to unveil its deeper meaning. Even if misunderstood by others, the subjective intuitor remains loyal to an inner truth that transcends the transient and the visible. Through this loyalty, subjective intuitors might become transmitters of hidden insight, spiritual renewal, or artistic depth, thought not without the dangers of detachment, dogmatism, or inner fragmentation. Hope you enjoyed this video and you found it informative. Stay tuned for more.